Okay, it's a Thursday night, and boy, it's almost like gonna be a family night. This is awesome. Our guest tonight is my cousin Gary's son, Peter Rifenburg. Hi, Peter. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. And hey, Bob, how are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. Just
Awesome.
still packing up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you're going to come up to St. George. I'm here in St. George right now. I'm in the same state as Peter, who's up north, up in University of Utah. But my cousin Gary Reifenberg, and I obviously grew up together and doing a lot of visiting. But this is really neat that I've known Peter. I've exchanged messages with Peter because of his interest in triathlon, but I've never met him. So this is actually my first time to actually sit and talk with Peter, and Peter has an amazing triathlon journey that we're going to hear about. So before we get going too far, I am going to turn the mic over to Bob for the official introduction.
All right. Thank you, John, and welcome, Peter. And it really is awesome to have you on here tonight because the adversity you've gone through and the setbacks, your story is really amazing. And it gives me goosebumps just thinking about everything you've gone through and how far you've come and how young you are to have done all this. For everybody who's listening, Peter is a grad student, first year grad student at the University of Utah in adapted physical education, which is just that's just a hero's profession. I really applaud you for doing that. So Peter has a vision issue, and he has a I don't even know what you would want to call it, but I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and I'm going to ask you. So what is your vision issue? How did you get into sports with this type of a vision issue, and how did it parlay into triathlon? So again, welcome, but get us started here, Peter.
Sure. So the visual condition is called retinoblastoma, that meaning cancer in the retinas, and I was born with that. I was cleared of it at about the age of 2, but I was given all the hard talks at a very young age. So I was never able to drive, never able to play contact sports, and having that not being able to play contact sports was a huge thing. So I eventually took up cycling. I remember very clearly my grandfather and I found a old bike at a restaurant dumpster. We took that bike home, and me and my babysitter actually painted that bike. And that was my first experience riding bikes, was that bike that we fixed up and painted, riding all around the neighborhood. And it's kind of how I got into biking. So that was the first kind of discipline that I found. And then growing up, I got into middle school, and that was about the time you could try out for, modified sports, junior varsity teams. And I wanted to go for the swim team because I had no interest in running at that point. So tried out for the swim team, didn't get in, kind of expected it. I think I did breaststroke on my back because I had no clue what I was doing. So I don't think I was going to get in that way. But I still wanted to give it a try. And in my local town, they had a kids triathlon. So you would swim maybe 100 meters, bike a mile, or run half a mile, things like that. And I remember very vividly, my dad told me that I came out of the water nearly dead last, but I came back from the bike almost in the lead.
Yeah.
So all those years of biking really started to pay off. And I did 2 more of those, I think. And then going into high school, I actually broke my leg. So any activities were put on hold for like 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got into high school, through the confidence of my vision teacher, started reaching out to try out for junior varsity and varsity track and field. So I did track and field in my junior year of high school, and my coach had no clue I was visually impaired until a news team showed up and started wanting to interview him, because they told him, like, you have this student who's visually impaired in your team. And I think he was just as confused.
He was like, who? Tell me who is?
He was trying to figure, where's Waldo, who's a visually impaired one. But getting into those, I wanted to get in triathlon. When I was in my freshman year of high school, I watched my aunt down in Ironman, Maryland. And that was I think that's what really set it off, wanting to do these Ironmans, these triathlons. They look so fun, and all of the time and effort that these athletes are putting into this, it was really inspiring to see that. So after completing my first year of track in my junior year, going into my senior year, I did my first sprint triathlon in a little town called Darien in New York.
Yeah.
And that was really my first experience of triathlon.
And you were 16 at the time.
I was 16, yeah.
Hey, I'd like to pause for a second here. You skipped over a lot of stuff, and as you were growing up, you were told you can't do contact sports.
Right.
And what was the story with that? That was something that would injure your eyes?
Yeah. So at a very young age, I want to say about 6 or 7 years old, my doctor told me, like, you cannot play contact sports because if you were to get hit in the head, you would completely lose your vision. So having to kind of find ways to stay active while obviously having that thought in the back of my head the entire time.
Oh, geez, that must have been horrible, just having that in the back of your mind all the time.
Well, it didn't stop my friends and I from having fun.
Yeah, I can see you're related to John.
Well, I even want to back up a little further. I mean, you as an infant, you had cancer and you had to beat cancer. And so at a very young age, you're already going through treatment, and the toughness in you, I think even you know, it was born in you that you had this grit about you, and that's so impressive. But the vision problems have continued, and obviously as Bob's going down this path, that your doctors said you couldn't do certain sports.
Right. And I don't think I would be nearly where I am, and you'll see it and when I talk about it in the future of Ironmans, but always having people supporting me, I think, is what got me to where I am today. And I couldn't have done it without the support of my parents, my grandparents, friends and family, and stuff like that. I would not be here without them.
No.
Well, that's wonderful that you're grateful and you've acknowledged that. And something else for the people who are listening that you may have mentioned it, but I think you skipped over a little bit too lightly, is that you did your first triathlon at 16, then you was your sprint, then you did a bunch of Olympics, and then spent the summer getting ready, and you did an Ironman at 18. I mean, that's incredibly young to do a full Ironman. So that's and you've done 5, right? Correct, 5 Ironman.
F1, yeah.
Yeah, and several couple of halves, and somewhere around 20 between fulls, halves, and Olympics and sprints. You've done quite a few triathlons to start with.
And they've been all over. I've done, you know, being able to travel with the sport, I think, is awesome. But also I've been just moving around a lot between New York, and I spent a few years in South Carolina, and now I'm over in Utah. So I've been doing these all over the country pretty much.
Wow, that's awesome. And actually you remind me a little bit of John, because he loves to do triathlons and travel all over the world doing them. So it's obvious that you are related in more than one level.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. So let's talk about finding Ironman. And you went and watched Ironman Maryland, which is a great race, and that sort of inspired you. But you had to wait to be 18 before you did a race, right? Doesn't Ironman have a minimum age?
Right. Yeah. I think I remember this vividly. I did a race in a town called Canandaigua, New York. They'd had an Olympic triathlon.
Yep.
And at the time there was a half Ironman in Syracuse. And I remember on the car ride back from Canandaigua, emailing the director of Ironman Syracuse, and like, can I do this race at 17? And they obviously, for legal reasons, they said no, but still, I wanted to see what I could do at such a young age.
Oh, I love it.
Your first lesson as a triathlete is it's better to get forgiveness than permission, probably.
Exactly.
So how did you go about training for that first long distance event? I mean, did you have any resources? Were you just sort of putting in as many miles as you can? How did you approach that?
I think I was still in high school at the time. So most of my training came from being on the track team and being on the distance team. So getting 5 or 6 miles every day. And on weekends, I would actually ride my bike. On days it was nice, I would ride my bike to work, which was the next town over.
Okay.
But I had no access to a pool or anything like that. So I came into it only being really trained in, we'll say, 1.5 areas.
Oh, I love that. And it's so great to just build the training into your regular lifestyle. And so what kind of training volume did you do for that first long? So let's say your first Ironman would have been Lake Placid.
Right.
And you hadn't done a whole lot of swimming up until this point.
Right. My university at the time, their pool was hardly ever open. that I was able to go to it. I think I was still working at that time, so I really had no pool experience. I think I got in the pool maybe once or twice a month training for Lake Placid.
Good Lord.
And a lot of it just came down to a lot of running, a lot of time in the gym, and biking whenever possible. Because as John knows, in New York, we have brutal winters, so there was no getting outside for 5 or 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tough to train year round down in over in New York. All right, so let's talk about getting ready for Lake Placid, which is a brutally hard course to begin with, and weather can be really a factor there too. So talk us through that first Ironman Lake Placid.
Sure. So when I came to the event, I thankfully, my grandparents and a few relatives came out to see that event. They were all local to New York, so a lot of support from the very beginning. And a lot of it came down to recommendations from my aunt who did Maryland. I had no, nowadays I'm a lot smarter, I like to think, but at the time I had like no training plan, no really set structure. So it really came down to, I wanted to bike and I wanted to swim and I wanted to run at least 3 days a week for each discipline.
Oh.
Peter,
And
how long, what was your longest swim before you did Lake Placid?
so thankfully,
pool?
when I got out of college in mid-May, there was a local pool that had lap swim at night. So I would go there. And I did get the full 3,800 meters before Lake Placid, but that was only in a pool. So I had no like open water experience.
Oh, you went into open water for your first triathlon was your first time in open water?
Yeah, I think so, actually.
Good Lord.
Oh, to be young, I love it.
Very impressive.
So what were you thinking when you were going, standing on the start line, or it was probably a rolling start in 2018, right?
Yeah, the rolling start. I think that was the first year did a rolling start.
Okay, so as you were approaching that water's edge, what's going through your mind? I mean, you're 18 at this point, and I mean, what's going through your mind as you get ready to enter the water?
I asked myself the question I think everyone asks of, why am I doing this? It's way too early on a Sunday morning to be doing this. But mainly I was asking, like, am I ready enough? Am I going to finish this?
Yeah.
And after getting through the swim, which I think was the hardest part for me, kind of getting on the bike, which was my favorite discipline, I think it really settled the nerves. And then getting to the run, obviously not being able to train all the way, having some shoulder pain, but kind of getting to like the 15-mile mark with 7 hours to go, I kind of knew I already made it. So I was in very good spirits that second half.
Oh, that is fantastic. And so with the swim, that's a 2-loop swim and you have to get out and back in. What was that like, where you had to get out of the water and then run and start it again?
I think I got really comfortable really quickly, because obviously if a rolling start, really chaotic, but having kind of like a line of people coming in and out of the water just allowed me to kind of follow and tag along with the group a lot. And that was the hardest part for me, was sighting the course.
I was going to ask you about that. How hard was it to see the buoys, and what did you do? How did you sight?
So Lake Placid in Mirror Lake has a little line that goes through the course underneath it, and trying to find that line as hard as I could and just trying to hold on to that line was how I got through the swim course. But at the time, I was still a very inexperienced swimmer. So I was only breathing to my left side, and obviously the buoys on the right side. So it's kind of just, am I on course the entire time?
Oh, I love it. And Bob, they do a lot of boating there, a lot of crew races. And so they have a rope that's under the water that you can spot. So that's
You can actually see it?
Yeah.
Clear mornings,
Swim over top of it?
Yeah.
So when I did Lake Placid in 2019, it was big cloudy out, so you couldn't really see a lot, but I did the race in 2022 and it was picture perfect the entire way through.
Oh, that's great. So that's a hard bike course too. So talk us through that bike course, because you can get going really fast at first, and then all of a sudden you have to start doing this long climb. Tell us how that was.
So the first loop of the course was a nightmare. I will say it full out. And there's a descent about 15 miles in called the Keene descent. And you go from about, I would say, 2,000 feet of elevation to about 900 feet of elevation very quickly. And when you are not as confident on the tri bike and you are surrounded by others who are not as confident, it can be terrifying. So the first lap, I kind of took it very slow, just wanted to get through it. And I think it really helped me in the long run, kind of familiarize myself with the course.
Mhm.
But I never minded climbing. Where
Mhm.
I lived in Orchard Park, New York, it was very hilly, so
Yeah.
I had a lot of experiences with the short climbs.
Mhm.
But then getting to the second loop of the course, it's very much spread out, and you kind of, I was very, very confident going down the Keen descent again.
Yeah.
Peter, as I understand your vision issue, you don't see things well until you come right up on them.
So I'll say it now. I was actually gonna save it for a little bit later. When I ride, I had no glasses. When I was running, I had no glasses. I didn't get prescription sunglasses until about a month ago.
Mm.
And what was that? What was that like? Can you explain that to me? I don't understand.
Right. So my vision, what I can see objects decently well, but it's more so of the details in the objects. So if there's a sign telling you to go left or right, I can see that. But let's say like the special needs sign, that's impossible to see.
Oh, that's amazing that you can navigate this with that vision. I mean, that's so impressive. So, do you study the maps ahead of time, or how do you make sure that you're not going to miss something like the special needs bags?
So actually, I don't know if it's because of the vision or not, but I've never used the special needs area.
Oh.
But I do look at the courses a lot. I like to know what I'm up against, essentially.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, I love it.
Thankfully, most of the courses are incredibly well marked. So,
Yeah,
but with the local races, it does get kind of tricky.
that's true because with an Ironman, you've got more people on the course too, so that helps. But that's amazing. Okay, so you get off the bike, and that's your strong segment. But your run is also good because you've done the track at this point. So tell us how the Lake Placid run went.
So the Lake Placid run, it was tough because I was very inexperienced. So when I came into the run, I think I was still wearing like daily trainers, the same ones I trained in for the entire time. I had
Mhm.
at that point I didn't have enough money for these race shoes that everyone had.
Running shoes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So coming into it, I felt very comfortable on the shoes because I've been using them the whole time. And the course itself, when you leave Lake Placid, there is nothing around you. So it's just you and everyone else around you.
Mhm.
So I would say definitely the isolation was the hardest part. But coming back into the town for the second lap, it kind of like rejuvenates you. Everyone's cheering for you. So it was very refreshing.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like you learned really quickly because you did your first lap in the swim. And when you got out of the water and got back in, you said to yourself, I got this. Because
Mhm.
you, and then you did a lap on the bike, you learned, and then you used it to second. So, I mean, that's huge kudos to learn on the fly like that, Peter.
Thank you. It all comes down to confidence, building confidence. When you're able to do something once, you're much more likely to do it again and again and again. And that's what I like doing about most is just the repetitiveness. Some I find it boring, but I like being able to like pretty much test myself. Can I do this segment faster this time? Or should I do another segment a little slower just to back off for it?
Mm-hmm. And how old are you now? You're 22?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's like the wisdom you have at 22 is remarkable. I was going to say there were, what would we're going to ask you later, what tips and advice would you give to young people coming into the sport, but most of them will be older than you.
Mhm.
It's like, but you still will, and we'll get to that later. I think John had a question, follow-up question on Lake Placid.
No, this is all good. Let's jump into that. As you've done, your triathlon career, which you've packed a lot into a very short period of time. What advice do you give to other people getting into the sport?
I think consistency is the most important part.
John, you can see he's in your family.
Yeah,
This
Not
is John's
true,
mantra.
but always can, but it boils on the family too. I mean, I think my grandparents, I don't think they missed a race in years now. So just always having them around is awesome.
yeah.
But it's also coming down to surrounding yourself with people that support you, people that have trust in you. So just, I think it's important to just be around people that make you feel good and are willing to go with you to these things.
I love
That's
it.
awesome.
All right, so let's go back to, we haven't quite finished Lake Placid, your first race. You're on the run. What was going through your mind? And did you ever have any moments where you said, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it? Or were you feeling really confident throughout? and you were just like, I'm just going to knock this out.
So when you leave Lake Placid, there's about a 6 mile stretch of, like I said, where it's farmland and it's you and the competitors and the occasional aid station.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was my first triathlon bike I had. I haven't been using it for very long. So I had like a lot of upper body pain.
Mm.
And there was a point, like I can't move my arms to keep running.
Huh.
So obviously that was definitely going through my mind a lot. But as I was kind of looking at my watch, looking at the distance, I was like, I'm going to make it. There's no reason to sweat over it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, that's great. All right. So you finally get to the finish line. You see that finish line. Now, what are the thoughts at that point?
I'm going to do it again. That's what happened the day after registration opened. I signed up again for it, and realizing the amount of time and effort that everyone has put into to get this far.
Yeah.
It's really admirable just to see everyone giving it their all. And I really wanted to be a part of that community again and again and again.
Oh, I love it. And Lake Placid is that iconic finish around the Olympic skating oval. And that must have been fun. You had family there cheering you on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then actually at that point, I think Gary took a job in South Carolina and he was watching a live stream.
Right.
So he was also there in spirit, but it was just the feeling that everyone is watching you.
Yeah.
It was an awesome experience.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. So after you finished, how quickly was it before you signed up again?
So I think I was actually at a summer camp for children with visual impairment called Camp Abilities, and their registration opened for Lake Placid during that camp. So being able to talk about what I just did and then signing right back up for another one.
Mm-hmm.
And St. Lake Placid is what you signed up for a second time?
Yep. So I signed up for Lake Placid for 2020 Lake Placid, and we all know how that went.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that race I signed up for until last July in 2022.
Well, you've done 5. Where did they fit in?
So I did Ironman Maryland in 2021, and then I did Texas in April 2022. And then
Which one is your favorite course so far?
Maryland, for sure.
What makes that nice? What makes it your favorite?
The run is amazing. It's similar to Lake Placid in that, you have a few miles of where it's just you and everyone else around you. But when you come back into a small town like, Cambridge or Lake Placid, like everyone is there. Everyone is rooting for you to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great race as well. And this is fun that, we've done a lot of the same races, but we've never raced together. And I do look forward to eventually towing the line with you. All right. So you talked about your camp, and this is, I think, such a neat part of your story that you give back to the community quite a bit. Could you talk a little bit about what you do at the camp?
Sure. So to kind of give context, I had a teacher for the visually impaired. She's the same one that got me into track and field to begin with. Mm-hmm. But she also mentioned the summer camp it's a sports camp for kids with visual impairments. And it took place at a college called SUNY Brockport, which is about an hour from where I was. And I was told to go to it. So I did as a camper. Mm-hmm. And at the point, I was only one of 3 students with a visual impairment in my school. But then walking into this room where there's 150 adults and kids with visual impairment, it was really an eye-opening experience. And just seeing how hard the people that ran the camp worked and how much they wanted to make your week the best week it could be really inspired me to keep wanting to do it for the rest of my life, essentially. Mm. So the next year, I signed up for the camp again, and I graduated high school at like 2:00 on a Saturday, and I was at the camp by 4 that same day. So I went right from graduation to the camp just to be there as much as I could be for the kids that came there, because now the roles are flipped. I was kind of mentoring them instead.
Oh, I love
Is this when you decided you wanted to get a degree in adaptive physical education?
Yep. So when I went as an athlete at camper, that's what I wanted to do. Mm. And by the time I went the next year as kind of a coach, I already had my acceptance in the Brockport.
I love it. So do you share with your the camp attendees that you've done Ironman?
Mm-hmm. So a large part of our camp is to promote advocacy for the kids, to get them more involved in sports, to get them more involved in their phys ed classes. And every year I have the fortune of being able to talk about my experiences with Ironman, and that comes with the successes of finishing, but also the woes of, I think in Maryland, I had a jellyfish get stuck underneath my watch. So being able to experience it with them, that's not, all sunshine and rainbows, I think is the best part of what I get to do.
They must have you on a pedestal whenever. I could just imagine what these kids look like when they're listening to you, Peter. That's
I have
gotta
all
be
ears.
awesome.
That's all I know.
What's that?
I have all ears when I talk. That's all I know.
There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, that's fun.
I love it that you're such an inspiration to them. And I imagine you draw some inspiration from that as well, because now you've got more people that are connected with you, and your race is more than just a race, I guess.
So we have a thing at our campus called Care to Share. It's basically where the kids get to share their achievements. We do one at the beginning of each year to kind of see where people have been. And it's so great. I remember this very vividly. This one camper came in, he's about 13, shy as could be. And at this point, I was just like, I had my own student, so I really didn't pay any attention. But fast forward last year, 2022, I was his group leader, and he came in for Care to Share, and he's like, Coach Peter, I ran like a 1:32 half marathon. That's
Well, that must have made you feel proud as well, that you were part of that.
I felt proud until I had to run it from the track and field, and he kind of wiped the floor with me.
Yeah, but you got him to pass you. That's what's awesome.
Oh. So I am curious. You mentioned the proudness of that. I'm curious with all the races you've done, including Darien, which I love that race. I'm sorry to hear it's not happening anymore. What has been your proudest moment?
I would say the proudest moment in terms of overall, I got 10th at Ironman Maryland in my age group.
Wow.
But in overall, I would say there was it was a half distance in Boulder. And I came out of the bike onto the run about, I would say 8 or so minutes down from my first place in my age group. And so you go out 5K and then come back 5K, but you also have another 3 miles or so to go. And I passed him on the second lap with about a mile to go, and we shared a moment together. And then I found out that we're on the same team next year. Yeah. Oh. So it's kind of that, rival to friend kind of thing. And it was a very great experience to kind of see him at another race. Like, we raced each other last year, but now we're racing with each other this year. Yeah. No, that is fun because you're competitors, but you're encouraging each other at the same time. And there's a bond that you form with other athletes, especially. Right. So what are your plans for this upcoming year or this year right now? What do you have? So on the docket right now, I do have 1/2 and 1 full already registered for. That is 70.3 Boulder in early June. Yep. And then Ironman Arizona in mid-November. And I'm very excited for that one. Awesome. But in terms of after that, I'm actually going to Illinois for my PhD. So I get to do some more races like Ironman Wisconsin, Chattanooga. So I think that's the great thing about being able to live anywhere is that you have experiences, new people, new events, and new ways to get involved in the triathlon community. And I think it's great to be a part of it. Oh, that's great. And yeah. And we are looking forward to you coming down to Vegas and doing some of our races here. I gotta check the calendar. I think I have some free weekends. Yeah, we'll get you down here. We'll definitely get you down here, as I imagine you'll be driving down to Tempe for Ironman Arizona, right? Or will you fly? I fly. You're fly. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna get down there to watch you. That'll be a lot of fun. I'm not doing that, but it will be fun to cheer you on. Peter, this has just been fantastic. I am so glad that we got you on here, and I should say we got you on because you just finished Ironman Texas. Mm-hmm. And you had a really good race at Ironman Texas. Yeah, I felt really good. So in 2022, that was actually my first DNF. I had an issue with my rear derailleur. Yep. So kind of coming back, it was a lot of mixed emotions. It was the first race I had, I used a training plan, I had a nutrition plan. So I felt there's that confidence aspect, but also the worry of, am I actually going to finish this year?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of different emotions kind of playing at the same time.
Mm.
Well, you can hold your head high though. I mean, it was not your issue at all. I mean, you had a mechanical failure.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, don't beat yourself up for that, for sure.
After getting to that spot in the bike course and passing in, like, am I good? Am I still good? Phew. I'm going to get it this time.
Well,
And Peter, you're not a small triathlete.
Absolutely not. No.
Now, have you competed in the Clydesdale division, or you just go age group?
I've always competed in an age group. When Ironman offered a physical challenge, I subtly declined it and just continued the race in age group.
Wow. It's awesome.
well, I love it. Well, and on the mechanical, I'm sure your mechanic, your dad probably messed up, right? That was probably his
For sure. So it took
Yeah,
him and
Gary,
I
it
and
was-
some
it was
other
you.
it took him and I and some random other person to pull my derailleur out of my my bike wheel. So I'm sure I enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, well, it's amazing that's great to go back and do that race again. And like you said, that's a lot of emotions doing that. I am so impressed with what you've accomplished in such a short period of time. It's just so great to hear your story and hear more of what you do. And I love that you give back to the community and you're inspiring other people. It is really just a fantastic story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really is. Major kudos to you there, Peter.
All right, and Peter, we will get you to Vegas at some point for some of our races. So
Looking
before you
forward
go
to
to Illinois, we'll get you down here.
I could always use a break from the cold Midwestern winters. So
Yeah. We'll introduce you to some heat during the summer.
Yeah, you can do some heat training down here.
excellent.
I love it, Peter. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the call.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
All right, thanks everyone.